Part 1. I pretended to lose everything. The day I decided to test my son, I knew it might change our relationship forever. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do. But sometimes, the truth only shows itself when people believe you have nothing left to offer. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 68 years old, retired, and for most of my life I worked as an electrical contractor. 40 years of long days, construction sites, and saving every extra dollar. Not for myself, for my family, especially my son Ryan. Ryan had always been brilliant. From the time he was a child, teachers said he was destined for something big. My wife and I believed them. We sacrificed everything to make sure he had every opportunity. Private tutoring, college tuition, medical school, and when Ryan finally became a surgeon, I remember the pride I felt sitting in the hospital auditorium during his graduation ceremony. My wife squeezed my hand and whispered, "We did it," but she passed away 3 years later. And things between Ryan and me slowly changed after that. At first, it was small things. Shorter phone calls, busy schedules, missed holidays. Then came the excuses. "Dad, surgery schedules are crazy. Dad, I'll visit next month." Months turned into a year. Eventually, our conversations became polite, but distant, like two strangers trying to pretend they were still family. Then last winter, something happened that made me start wondering about something painful. Did Ryan love me? Or did he only love the security I represented? Because the truth was something almost no one knew. After decades of working and careful investing, I had built a very comfortable life. My savings, property investments, and retirement funds were worth several $1,000,000. Ryan knew I was comfortable, but he didn't know how comfortable. And recently, something he said stayed stuck in my mind. During one of our rare dinners together, he casually joked, "Dad, you better stay healthy. I'm counting on that inheritance one day." He laughed, but I didn't, because something about the way he said it didn't feel like a joke. That night, I went home and sat alone in the living room for hours, thinking. And the more I thought, the more one question kept repeating in my mind. If everything I had disappeared tomorrow, would my son still care about me? Or would I become a burden? That was the night I came up with a plan. A terrible plan, but a necessary one. 2 weeks later, I called Ryan. My voice sounded shaken. "Son," I said slowly, "I made a mistake." There was a pause. "What kind of mistake?" he asked. I was scammed. Silence filled the phone. Then I said the lie that would start everything. They took everything. My savings, my retirement, all of it. For several seconds, Ryan didn't speak. And the next words that came out of his mouth were not what I expected, not even close. But what he said next was the moment I realized this test might reveal more than I was prepared to hear. If you want, I can also make Part 2 even more shocking, where the son's first reaction reveals his real character. Part 2, his first reaction, for several seconds after I told him the money was gone, Ryan didn't say anything. Not a single word. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the phone. Then finally he spoke, but his voice didn't sound worried. It sounded irritated. "Dad, what do you mean you got scammed?" "I invested in something online," I said slowly. "They said it was a secure investment platform, and now the money's gone." Another pause. Then Ryan sighed heavily, the kind of sigh people make when they're dealing with a problem they don't want. "How much money are we talking about?" he asked. "All of it," I said. "My retirement savings." "The house?" "No, I still own the house," I replied. "But the savings?" They wiped everything out. Silence again. Then Ryan said something that made my stomach twist. "Dad, how could you be that careless?" I didn't answer. "You're almost 70 years old," he continued. "You should know better than to trust things like that." His tone wasn't concerned. It was judgmental, like a doctor scolding a patient who ignored obvious advice. "I thought it was legitimate," I said quietly. "Well, it obviously wasn't," he snapped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question I had been dreading. "So, what should I do now?" Ryan hesitated, and when he answered, his voice had completely changed. It sounded cold. "Well, you'll have to figure something out." "Figure something out?" I repeated. "Yes," he said quickly. "Maybe sell the house, or downsize. Move into a smaller place. You can't expect me to cover your mistakes." Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because I believed them, but because they came from my own son. "I wasn't asking you to cover anything," I said quietly. "I just thought maybe." But he cut me off. "Dad, I have my own life, my own responsibilities. I can't just start paying your bills because you made a bad financial decision." There it was. The answer I had been afraid of. Not concern, not compassion, just inconvenience. I looked out the window of my living room. My wife used to sit in the chair beside me every evening. She used to say Ryan had a good heart. Right now, I wasn't so sure. "All right," I said finally. "I understand." Ryan's voice softened slightly. "Look, Dad, maybe you can talk to a financial advisor or social services. They help seniors in situations like this." Social services. My own son had just suggested that. I forced a small laugh. "Well, thank you for the advice." "Yeah," he said. "I have surgery in an hour, so I have to go." Before hanging up, he added one last thing. "And Dad, next time, be more careful with your money." Then the call ended. I slowly lowered the phone and sat there in complete silence. I had expected disappointment, maybe frustration, but not this. Not from the boy I spent 40 years supporting. But what Ryan didn't know was that this conversation was only the beginning of the test. Because losing money wasn't a real question. The real question was, how far would he go once he believed I had nothing left to give him? Part 3, a different call. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet living room for a long time. The silence felt heavier than usual. Not because of what Ryan said, but because of what he didn't say. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask how I felt after losing everything. He didn't even ask if I needed help. All he cared about was that my mistake might somehow affect him. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the photo on the bookshelf. It was taken 20 years ago. Ryan was standing between my wife and me, wearing his first white medical coat. He looked so proud. And my wife, she looked even prouder. She always believed Ryan had a kind heart. I wanted to believe that too. But after that phone call, something inside me had started to doubt it. Still, the test wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun, because there was one more person I needed to call. Someone Ryan rarely spoke to anymore. My daughter, Emily. Emily was 2 years younger than Ryan. While Ryan had followed the path of success and prestige, Emily had chosen something very different. She worked as a public school teacher. She didn't make much money. She drove an old car, and she lived in a small apartment across town. But Emily had always been the one who called me every week just to talk. The one who visited on holidays even when Ryan said he was too busy. So I picked up the phone again and dialed her number. She answered almost immediately. "Hi, Dad," she said cheerfully. "How are you today?" Her voice alone already sounded warmer than Ryan's entire conversation. I hesitated for a moment. Then I told the same story. "Emily, something bad happened." Her tone changed instantly. "What's wrong?" "I got scammed." There was a pause. "Scammed?" "Yes. They took my retirement savings." Another silence. But this one felt different. Not cold. "Concerned?" "Oh my God, Dad," she said quickly. "Are you okay?" The words caught me off guard, because that was the first question Ryan never asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'm okay, but the money is gone." Emily didn't hesitate. "Dad, listen to me. We'll figure it out." Ryan had said you'll have to figure it out. Emily said we'll figure it out. The difference felt enormous. "I'm so sorry," she continued. "These scammers target older people all the time. Have you reported it to the police?" "Not yet," I said. "Okay, we'll handle that together." She paused for a moment, then added something that made my chest tighten. "Dad, if you need a place to stay, you can move in with me." Her apartment was barely big enough for one person, but she offered it without hesitation. "You'd do that?" I asked quietly. "Of course I would," she said. "You're my father." Then she laughed softly. "Besides, I've been trying to convince you to move closer for years." For a moment I couldn't speak, because the contrast between my two children had suddenly become very clear. One was worried about inconvenience. The other was worried about me. But Emily wasn't finished. "Actually," she said thoughtfully, "I'm coming over tonight." "You are?" "Yes. We'll talk through everything. And Dad," her voice softened again, "you're not alone in this." After the call ended, I sat there staring at the phone. The test had already revealed something important. But what Emily didn't know yet was that the real surprise would happen when both of my children were in the same room together. because that dinner was about to expose the truth about my family in a way none of us expected. Part 4. The Dinner Test. That evening, Emily arrived exactly at 6. She walked into the house carrying 2 grocery bags and a worried look on her face. "I brought dinner," she said as she stepped inside. "You didn't have to do that," I replied. She shook her head. "Yes, I did." Emily placed the bags on the kitchen counter and immediately started unpacking things. Soup, bread, fresh vegetables. Simple food, but made with care. "You shouldn't be worrying about cooking right now," she said. "You've had a stressful day." I smiled quietly. Emily had always been like this. Practical, caring, and most importantly present. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Ryan. He stepped inside, still wearing his hospital scrubs, looking slightly annoyed. "I don't have much time," he said. "I've got an early surgery tomorrow." Emily folded her arms. "You almost didn't come at all." Ryan shrugged. "I came, didn't I?" The tension between them was already obvious. I gestured toward the table. "Let's just sit down." We ate quietly for the first few minutes. Emily kept asking questions about the scam. "How did they contact you? Did they pressure you? Do you have the emails?" Ryan barely touched his food. Then finally he spoke. "Dad, I've been thinking." Emily stopped mid-bite. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "The best solution is probably selling this house." Emily stared at him. "What?" Ryan continued calmly. "It's too big for Dad anyway. If he sells it, he can move into a smaller apartment and stretch whatever money he has left." Emily's voice grew sharp. "He just lost his savings. And your first solution is to make him homeless?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "I didn't say homeless. I said practical." Emily shook her head. "Practical for who?" Ryan sighed. "Look, Emily, I'm just being realistic. Dad can't expect us to carry him financially." That was when I decided to push the test a little further. "I might need some help for a while," I said quietly. Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What kind of help?" "Just temporary support, until I figure things out." Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Well, my finances are pretty tight right now." Emily laughed in disbelief. "Tight? You're a surgeon." Ryan frowned. "You don't understand how expensive my lifestyle is." Emily leaned forward. "Your lifestyle?" "Yes," Ryan said defensively. "I have a mortgage, student loans, car payments." "You also just bought a new sports car," Emily interrupted. Ryan's jaw tightened. "That's not the point." Emily slammed her fork down. "No, the point is Dad spent his entire life helping you succeed. And now you're acting like helping him is some kind of burden." The room went silent. Ryan looked irritated. "This isn't fair." Emily shook her head again. "No, Ryan. What's not fair is how quickly you turned your back on him." Ryan pushed his chair back slightly. "Dad made a bad decision, and now he has to live with it." That was the moment I realized something important. The test was already revealing exactly what I needed to know. But what Ryan didn't realize was that the real surprise was still coming. Because in just a few days, I was going to reveal something that would completely change this conversation. And when Ryan learned the truth about the mummy, his reaction would shock everyone in that room. Part 5. The lawyer's visit. The dinner ended awkwardly that night. Ryan left quickly, saying he had to wake up early for surgery. Emily stayed behind to help me clean up. As she washed the dishes, she spoke quietly. "Dad, I know Ryan sounded harsh tonight." "He didn't just sound harsh," I replied. "He sounded like I was a problem he wanted to solve." Emily sighed. "He's always been like that." "What do you mean?" "He thinks life is a list of achievements," she said. "Money, status, success." She dried her hands and looked at me seriously. "But family isn't supposed to work like that." I nodded. "You're right." Emily grabbed her coat a few minutes later. "Call me if you need anything," she said. I meant what I said earlier. You can move in with me. I smiled. "Thank you." After she left, the house became quiet again. But the next morning, the test moved to its next stage. At exactly 10 o'clock, someone knocked on the front door. I opened it to see a man in a gray suit holding a leather briefcase. "Good morning, Mr. Harper," he said politely. "My name is Michael Bennett. Your attorney asked me to deliver some documents." I nodded and invited him inside. Michael had worked with my financial advisor for years. He knew about the plan. He placed a folder on the table. "Everything is ready," he said. Inside the folder were the legal documents that would change everything. A trust. My properties. My investments. Every dollar I had spent 40 years building. And one very important instruction. The entire estate would soon be transferred into a family trust. But not equally. The person who received control of that trust would be the one who proved they cared about more than just money. I signed the papers carefully. Michael watched quietly. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "I am. Your children may react strongly." "That's part of the point," I replied. Michael nodded. "Then there's one more step." "What's that?" "You need to call them. Both of them." He closed the folder and stood up. "The reading of the trust happens tomorrow." My stomach tightened slightly. Tomorrow. That meant the test was almost over. Later that afternoon, I called Emily first. "Can you come by tomorrow morning?" I asked. "Of course." Then I called Ryan. "I need you here tomorrow," I said. "Why?" he asked. "My lawyer wants to discuss something important." Ryan sighed. "Dad, I'm really busy. It won't take long." There was a pause. Then Ryan asked the question I expected. "This isn't about the scam money, is it?" I smiled slightly. "No, it's about something much bigger." Ryan agreed to come. But what neither of them knew was that tomorrow morning would reveal the truth about more than just money. Because the real purpose of that meeting was to show both of my children exactly what their choices meant. And when the lawyer opened that folder, someone in that room was going to be very surprised. Part 6. The Reading of the Trust. The next morning, the house felt unusually tense. Emily arrived first, just like she said she would. She walked in carrying coffee and pastries. I figured everyone would be too nervous to eat, she said. I laughed quietly. You're probably right. 10 minutes later, Ryan arrived, still dressed in his hospital scrubs. He looked impatient. I can only stay for about 20 minutes, he said. Emily rolled her eyes. Of course you can. Ryan ignored her and looked at me. So what's this meeting about? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. That would be Michael. I opened the door and welcomed him inside. He carried the same leather briefcase from the day before. Good morning, he said to both of my children. Ryan frowned. Who is this? Michael set the briefcase on the table and opened it carefully. My name is Michael Bennett, he explained. I'm here to discuss Mr. Harper's estate. Ryan's eyebrows rose immediately. Estate? Emily looked confused. Dad, what's going on? Michael placed several documents on the table. As you both know, Mr. Harper recently experienced a financial loss. Ryan nodded quickly. Yes, he told us about the scam. Michael folded his hands calmly. However, the purpose of this meeting is not about the scam. Ryan frowned again. Then what is it about? Michael looked directly at both of them. Mr. Harper has decided to restructure his estate through a family trust. Ryan leaned forward. Wait, estate? Emily looked puzzled. Dad, I thought you lost your savings. I remained quiet. Michael continued speaking. For the record, Mr. Harper's total assets currently include several investment properties, retirement accounts, and business holdings. Ryan's face slowly changed. Wait, what? Michael calmly read from the document. The estimated value of the estate is approximately $4.2 million. The room went completely silent. Emily blinked. 4 million? Ryan stared at me. But you said you lost everything. I leaned back in my chair. I said I was scammed, and I wanted to see how my children would react. Ryan's face turned red. You tested us? Yes. Emily looked stunned. Ryan's voice grew sharp. That's ridiculous. Is it? I asked calmly. Michael continued. The trust document names a primary executor. Ryan leaned forward eagerly. And who is that? Michael looked down at the paper. The executor will have control of the estate and final decision authority. Ryan smiled slightly. Well, that makes sense. After all, I'm the one with financial experience. Emily looked uncomfortable. But Michael finished the sentence. The executor named in the trust is... He paused briefly. Then read the name. Emily Harper. Ryan's smile disappeared instantly. What? Emily looked shocked. Me? Ryan slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. I'm the one who understands money. Emily shook her head. That's not the point. Ryan turned toward me angrily. You're punishing me for being honest. No, I said quietly. I'm rewarding the one person who cared about me. Not my money. Ryan stared at me in disbelief. You can't be serious. But the truth was already written in the documents. And for the first time, Ryan realized the test had never been about money. It had been about character, and the result was something he clearly never expected. Part 7. The Truth Hurts. Ryan pushed his chair back so hard it scraped loudly across the floor. "This is unbelievable," he said, staring at the papers. "You're giving everything to Emily?" Michael corrected him calmly. "Not everything. The estate remains a family trust, but Emily has control over how it is managed." Ryan looked furious. "So I get nothing?" Emily immediately shook her head. "That's not what he said." But Ryan wasn't listening. He turned toward me. "All my life I worked hard to become successful," he said. "I became a surgeon. I built my career. And this is how you repay me?" I stayed calm. "This has nothing to do with your career." Ryan laughed bitterly. "Of course it does. You chose her because she plays the sweet daughter." Emily looked hurt. Ryan stopped, but Ryan kept going. "She barely makes enough to pay rent, and now suddenly she's in charge of millions?" Michael finally spoke again. "Mr. Harper's decision is based on legal and personal considerations." Ryan pointed at the lawyer. "Stay out of it." Emily's voice became firmer. "You're acting like this is a competition." Ryan turned toward her. "Because it is." "No," she said quietly. "It isn't." I looked directly at Ryan. "Do you remember what you said to me the night you heard about the scam?" Ryan looked away. "I don't remember exactly. You said I should sell the house." Ryan shrugged. "Well, that was practical. You said I should move into a small apartment. That was realistic. You said my mistakes shouldn't become your burden." Ryan crossed his arms. "And that was the truth." Emily shook her head slowly. "Do you even hear yourself?" Ryan looked frustrated. "I was trying to help." "No," Emily said. "You were trying to protect your money." Ryan laughed sarcastically. "Funny how the poor sister suddenly becomes the moral expert." The room went quiet again. Finally, I spoke. "The trust is not permanent." Ryan looked back at me. "What do you mean?" Michael explained. "The executor can change the structure later if they believe it benefits the family." Ryan slowly turned toward Emily. "So you can give me control later." Emily looked thoughtful. "I could." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "So you will?" Emily looked directly at him. "That depends." "On what?" Ryan asked. "On whether you start acting like a son instead of a businessman." Ryan stared at her silently. For the first time in the conversation, he had no answer. Michael closed the folder. "The documents are now active. Unless Mr. Harper decides otherwise, Emily will manage the estate starting today." Ryan grabbed his jacket angrily. "This is ridiculous." He walked toward the door. But before leaving, he turned back. "You'll regret this decision." Then he walked out. The door slammed behind him. Emily looked exhausted. I didn't want it to happen like this. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't cause it." But deep down, I knew something important had just happened. Ryan believed the story was over. But the truth was, the real consequences of his choices were only beginning. Part 8. A choice that could change everything. The house stayed quiet after Ryan left. Emily sat at the table staring at the trust documents like they might disappear if she blinked. "I didn't ask for this," she said softly. "I know," I replied. Michael packed his papers back into the leather briefcase. "Everything is legally filed," he said. "The trust is now active." Emily looked nervous. "So what exactly does that mean?" Michael explained carefully. "It means you now control the family trust. All major financial decisions will go through you." Emily rubbed her temples. "That sounds overwhelming." "It's not as complicated as it sounds," Michael reassured her. "You simply manage the assets responsibly and protect them for the future." Emily looked at me. "Dad, are you sure about this?" I nodded. I've never been more sure about anything. Michael checked his watch. "If you need anything, call me." Then he left. The house became quiet again. Emily sighed. "I wish Ryan hadn't reacted like that. He feels betrayed," I said. "But sometimes the truth hurts." Emily folded the papers carefully. "I don't want to fight with him." "You won't have to." "But what if he never forgives us?" I smiled slightly. "Then he'll have to live with that decision." Emily stayed for another hour. We talked about normal things. Old memories. Family stories. The kind of conversations that had nothing to do with money. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "Thank you for trusting me," she whispered. "You earned it." Later that evening, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But I answered. "What do you want, Ryan?" His voice sounded calmer now. I overreacted earlier. I stayed silent. He continued. "I just didn't expect that." "I know." There was a long pause. Then Ryan asked quietly, "Can we talk tomorrow?" "About what?" "The trust and everything else." I thought about it for a moment. "Fine," I said. "Come by in the morning." After the call ended, I sat alone in the living room. Part of me hoped Ryan truly wanted to fix things, but another part of me had lived long enough to recognize something else: regret. And regret often appears when people realize they may have lost something valuable. The question was, did Ryan regret how he treated me? Or did he regret losing control of the money? Tomorrow morning, I was going to find out. Part 9, The Apology. The next morning, Ryan arrived earlier than expected. He knocked softly this time, not like the impatient knock he used the day before. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in." Ryan walked into the living room slowly, looking around the house like he hadn't really seen it before. "Coffee?" I asked. "Yeah, sure." We sat at the kitchen table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan finally sighed. "I didn't sleep much last night." I figured. He stared at his coffee. "I've been thinking about everything. The trust. The test." "What you said." I waited. Ryan continued. "I was angry yesterday. That much was obvious." He nodded. But I kept replaying that conversation in my head, the one about the scam. I stayed silent. Ryan rubbed his forehead. I sounded cold. "You were." He didn't argue. "I thought I was being practical." he said. You were being selfish. Ryan looked down again. Maybe. Another pause. Then he said something I hadn't expected. You know why I became a surgeon? No, because growing up, we never had money. That surprised me. Ryan continued. I watched you work overtime every week. I watched you worry about bills. So I promised myself something. What? That I would never struggle like that. I nodded slowly. That's understandable. But somewhere along the way, he admitted quietly, I started seeing everything like a transaction. Emily, you, even family. He finally looked at me. And when you told me you lost everything, I panicked. You didn't panic, I said. You distanced yourself. Ryan didn't deny it. I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you'd depend on me financially. I leaned back in my chair. And now? Ryan exhaled slowly. Now I realize something. What? You weren't testing my financial skills. You were testing my heart. For the first time since the meeting yesterday, Ryan actually looked ashamed. I failed, he said quietly. The room stayed silent for a moment. Then Ryan spoke again. I'm not here to ask for money. I raised an eyebrow. No? No. I'm here to ask something else. What? Ryan looked straight at me. A second chance. I studied his face carefully. After decades of raising him, I knew when he was pretending. But this time, he wasn't. Still, there was one more thing he needed to understand. Ryan, I said slowly, the trust belongs to Emily now. I know. And the decision about the future of this family is no longer mine. Ryan nodded. I understand that too. Then what exactly are you asking for? Ryan gave a small, honest smile. I'm asking for the chance to prove that I can be a better son, not a richer one, not a more successful one, just a better one. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I stood up. Good, I said, because the next conversation is going to include Emily, and what happened in that conversation would decide whether our family could truly become whole again.